the limits tolerance of dimensions of components to be tested. As there are two limits of dimensions for each part, high and low, two gauges are used to check each dimension of component. The part is checked by successively assembling the two gauges. So, the part which we are checking for dimensions, we are trying to assemble the gauge onto that dimension. If it is a hole which we are trying to measure or identify whether it is acceptable or not, the go gauge and no gauge will be tried to assemble with that part. The go gauge side should, the go end side of the gauge should be able to enter into the hole, whereas the no go side should not assemble into the hole, and if this kind of test is passed, then the component is passed. The part is checked by successively assembling the two gauges. Since the dimension of component should be within specified limits, one of the gauges is called go gauge, which should pass through or over the part, and not go gauge, which should not pass through or over the component, as shown in figure 2. So, you can see the interference part over here, this shown with the hatched part. So, a go gauge should be able to, which is shown on the left hand side, which also signifies the lower limit of the dimension. This go side should be able to enter into this machined hole, where the part is being checked whether the machining is done properly or not, has the hole been manufactured properly or not. So, this go side should be able to enter into this hole for the checking of this hole type of dimensions or gap type of dimensions. And the second side of the limit gauge is the not go gauge, which should not be able to enter into this hole. So, this interference over here, which is shown as a hatched part, is called the tolerance. And similarly, for the male parts or the external dimensions, we see on the left hand side the go gauge is slightly larger than the not go side of the gauge. The gap over here is slightly larger for the go gauge, and the gap over here is slightly lower than the gap of go side gauge. So, this is the interference over here. All the parts which lie in this high limit and the low limit will pass the test, and they are acceptable. So, with these go gauge and no gauge, we are just trying to find out what are the parts that are acceptable and the parts which are not acceptable. So, with this kind of measurement or inspection with limit gauges, we are easily able to find out the components which pass the test, which are successful, and the parts which are not successful or which do not pass the test and are thrown into the rejected lot. Then another way of classifications are the gauge should pass over or through the part under its own weight. So, this is very important part, that the gauges should be made light in weight, and they should be passing over or into the part. So, that is why sometimes we are making hollow gauges also, because that reduces the weight of the limit gauge. So, another classification is according to purpose. Number 1, workshop gauge or working gauge. Number 2 is the inspection gauge. Number 3 is purchase inspection gauge. Number 4 is the reference or master gauge. So, these are the type of different gauges which are used in different situations. The gauges which are used in maximum situations is the number 1 type of gauges which are used in the workshop while the manufacturing is going on. The operators are themselves using these gauges to find out what they are producing. And second type of gauges are the inspection gauges, which are used by the supervisors or the quality control department, wherein these gauges are made more accurately, and it can be checked whether the parts have been produced in the right quality by the workers or not. And then next is your purchase or inspection gauge. These are different kind of gauges wherein before buying the parts are to be tested, and if the part is tested okay with help of purchase inspection gauge, then the parts can be purchased. And the next is reference or master gauge, which is the most accurate one and will be the most expensive one as well. The number one gauge over here, workshop gauge, is the cheapest among these four type of gauges, and the number four type, the reference or master gauge, is the most expensive type, and it is more dimensionally controlled. It is having very low tolerance. This may be having tolerance in microns, whereas uh, the number one type of gauge will be having tolerance in tens of microns, where otherwise for reference gauges it is only in microns. Then we discuss these type of gauges in detail. Workshop gauge or the working gauge. It is used by machine operators to check dimensions of parts as they are being produced. These gauges actually have limits within which the components should fall. Gauges are so designed and used such that dimensions of parts can be kept near to middle of the tolerance. Then second type of gauges are the inspection gauges. Inspection gauges are used for by the inspectors to finally accept the parts as regard the dimensions. These gauges are made with slightly large tolerance so that the parts and that pass the working gauge test also pass through them. Next type is the purchase inspection gauge. The need for such gauges arises when products from different plants are to be accepted. It is to be kept in mind that parts that are purchased may have been checked with worn out gauges. As such, it is necessary to check again on your own. Then another type of the final type of gauges is the reference or master gauges, which are very expensive. This type of gauges are used only to check the condition of working gauges, to check them for accuracy and general wear and tear. Reference gauges are reverse or opposite in form of the working or inspection gauges. Due to expenditure involved, such type of gauges are not used much, and rather for checking of conditions of working gauges is done by means of measurement with accurate measuring instruments. Then another classification type is according to form of tested surface. According to form of tested surface, the gauges are of two types: gauges for testing holes and gauges for testing shafts. Gauges for testing holes are called plug gauges, and those used for testing shafts are called snap or gap and ring gauges. So in this form, according to form of tested surface, we have number one, plug gauges. Plug gauges are used to check holes or gaps, which are shown in figure 3, and go gauges has size. So let us see the first of all the plug type of gauges, which we have earlier discussed in the beginning of the lecture. So these are the plug gauges. Number one is the integral end type of plug gauge. Number two is the renewable end type of plug gauge. Number three is hollow end type plug gauge, and number four is progressive type of plug gauge. So the manufacturing of these different gauges is different. You can see the top one is an integral part. The go and no go is on left hand side and the right hand side, and which is this type of gauge is one piece limit gauge. You can have the limit gauge in three pieces also. The left hand side, the go gauge side, the middle is the handle, and on the right hand side is the not go side. So in this type of gauge, limit gauge, we have the advantage that if one of the sides of the limit gauge wears out or is damaged, we can replace the one end of the limit gauge rather than throwing away, which has to be done in the number 1 case where both the parts are integral. If one side goes wrong, it will have to be thrown. For the second case, if one side goes wrong, this side will be replaced with a new one. Number 3 type over here is hollow type, which is made hollow on the left and right hand side for the reason that the weight of the limit gauge is reduced with this. So it should be easy to handle. It should not produce too much fatigue in the operators. And number 4 is the progressive type of gauge, in which you don't have to reverse the side of the gauge. Go and not go are made on the left hand side while you have the handle on the right hand side. So this is different from the above 3 limit gauges, plug gauges, because go and not go side are both on the left hand side of the handle. The go plug gauge has size equal to low limit of hole, and size of no go gauge is equal to high limit of hole of component. The next classification is snap or gap and ring gauges. These gauges are used for guarding the shafts and dimensions of male components. The no snap gauge, the go snap gauge size corresponds to high maximum limit of size of shaft, while no go gauge has size equal to low oblique minimum limit size of shaft. Various types of shafts are shown in figure 4. So for external parts, we have number 1 double ended snap gauge. On the one end you have go side and the other side you have not go side of the limit gauge. Then in second type of limit gauge for shafts or external parts is showing go side and the not go side on the same side. So the gauge is not required to be reversed to check for the part. The part should be entering the go side and it should not be able to enter into the not go side. Another type of gauge for external measurements is this adjustable gap snap gauge, in which this anvil can be adjusted to suitable dimension. So the first anvil is for the go side and the second anvil is for the not go dimension. Similarly, for external parts, you may have to check for ovality also of the part. So in this we have ring snap gauge, in which the go snap gauge, the go ring snap gauge will be having hole of bigger size than the not go side of ring snap gauges. Then classification may be done according to design, single limit and double limit. Then next is single ended and double ended. Number 3 fixed and adjustable. Number 4 integral and renewable end. Number 5 solid end and hollow end. So we can discuss this single limit and double limit gauges. The gauges cannot be made exactly. So we have learned all this in our lecture today for limit gauges. I hope this is beneficial for you all. Thanks a lot.